AI. So my journey has been like kind of dealing with a very regulated industry where most people don't want to make a change to figuring out how to transform healthcare. With that time, it was primarily data science, and then trying to get machine learning projects in there and figuring out how to value before even, having the data quality and infrastructure in place. So it's quite a bit of journey there. So I will put a lot of my perspective around what I've been seeing in generative AI with that background. Other than that, I've been working, coding, doing stuff with generative AI for like 6 months. Greg is one of my colleagues here. And it started back in November. So Greg was like, "What are you doing?" I'm doing this AI thing. What AI thing? It'll be like blockchain, or Web3, or whatever else, whatever hype. And I was like, "Man, this could be different," And he was like, "I don't know. This could be different." Everybody says the same thing, right? When blockchain came up, it was the same thing. So, and now 6 months in, there was a lot of practical use cases around it and all that. So, at Skypoint, our team is about 75 people or so. About 40 of them in Portland, Oregon, and about the same amount of people in Bangalore, India. So we primarily spend a lot of our time on data engineering, analytics, BI, AI. This is our world. So I will stop anytime. You can ask questions. You want to kind of dig into something, I'll try to keep it very informal. And so there's a lot in this subject. So I'll kind of go through a lot of the science behind it. So I have the first one as like the fundamentals of AI or generative AI as such, the foundational. Majority of the work came out of Stanford and Google, mostly the research. And how do you actually stick around trying to take research work from academia and apply that in an industry and create a commercial product out of it, right? Google did their first paper on it called the Transformer paper. This is more or less the moment the industry started to realize that they should give money, right? So before that, it's primarily all research work. Google Transformer paper actually start creating commercial companies or things around it, and that led to Elon founding OpenAI. And then nobody knew about OpenAI for a while, and then all of a sudden it pops up with ChatGPT back in October, November, and people are like, "Oh, what the hell is this?" Right? So I will also go through something that is really commercial within our company and what we are doing with this work, so that you can actually see some of these things in real action. So, and to see if it applies to you in your business or not. What are the different factors that is influencing it and all that kind of stuff. Next one is building trust. So some of the things that you probably have seen dealing with ChatGPT, it creates a lot of BS, right? Yeah. So it's like, how can I trust this thing? And is there a way to make it trustworthy? And also safety. So if I ask you to, write some bad code to damage the company, will it actually do it? It's like, okay, how do I hack into my CIO's, laptop, whatever. So a bad code is sitting there figuring it out, right? So if AI is going to assist that person, okay, it is it's beyond spear phishing if you think about it, right? Within a company with all this intrinsic knowledge, if people within an organization can create very damaging, so what happens is an organization that is, dealing with power or electricity or nuclear and whatever, right? So there's a lot of implications of what it can do, but I've personally experienced it in terms of creating things from scratch without no human assistance. This AI is coding entire software programs and applications. And the application that I'm going to show you here is actually mostly written by AI. So that is interesting. And then I have some time for interactive Q&A. And then I'll talk about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. That's what primarily most of these companies are working towards. So you will see, as you are interacting with these systems, you will see kind of signs of, human-like things, but it is not human. Like reasoning, ability to kind of grasp the knowledge. We were like, wow, this actually thought about it. How it can reason. So it can reason. So, and it's not just not a teleprompter, right? So then you will get convinced that, oh, this can do a lot, and then it will throw something super down, then they're like, what? This super intelligent thing can do amazing stuff and also at the same time be really stupid, right? How can that happen, right? So with that, I have a few questions for the group. How many of you have actually used ChatGPT or Bard? Pretty much most of the two. Okay. Have you used for actual business use or? Okay.
Writing poems for the wife. Poems for the wife.
Yeah. So any of you have been invited into or accepted to the Microsoft's Copilot program? No. Yeah. So they accepted 600 companies in the world, but so that is the integration of the OpenAI service into your business tools like Office, Outlook. And they have tons of videos and they made so much PR around it and nobody can get access to it. And you have to go through special approval. Still, you have a big line. So how about GitHub Copilot? Coding with that. Okay, one person. How about coding with ChatGPT? Have you actually coded 1, 2, 3, 4? Wow, that's awesome. Okay. All right. So I'll kind of get to the meat of the conversation. So there is this VC firm called Insight Partners. They actually put together kind of a framework that explains, I don't know if you guys can see this here, all right. So they kind of divided it into like 3-4 layers. The first layer is the foundation models. Think of it as like the global crossings of the world laying out internet wires nobody cares about, or Comcast. So, so the foundation models are the ones that came out of Stanford, so that this doesn't, create commercial disturbance, but on the other hand, these foundation models are very important. The second is like the most, I think, valuable thing to us as business or people working technology and business, which people call it as a specialization of these models for business use. So these special models, you can actually call ChatGPT as one of those. The way they presented them, it has general knowledge of the world, more or less, and use it for generating content primarily, or code, right? So, and then they just started adding images and things like that. So, sorry, my
there we go.
Animation was going off on this. Thank you, Greg. The third is tools to build applications. So right now, if you go want to build an AI application, you have to do it all mostly by hand. But it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to engineers, they actually want to build by hand. So I don't want any tools, right? And because you get more flexibility and things like that. But there are some tools and frameworks coming around. And inside that build area, there is what called alignment, which is where you want AI to align with what you stand for as an organization, as society. There's a lot of work going on that. So I think there's a lot of jobs created around this AI governance, AI alignment, in a way that it is aligning to it. So I worked at Cambia, and so I was a CTO there, and there was one of my counterparts was a chief AI officer. Oh yeah, I mean, we were kind of ahead of the time. And then I was like, "You actually got that title?" And it did happen. And there was another guy who came in after them. And he also got chief AI officer. He went out to Amazon now, right? So for some reason, Cambia thought ahead of themselves, And I had this title, and I was like, okay, but that title doesn't exist anymore in the company. So essentially, AI went through this hype cycle. It kind of fell short. Companies kind of overexcited about it, and then kind of went downhill from there, right? So that's it. Alignment, how the playgrounds and how this. I think lastly, the number 4 that you see there is where the value is created. where it is creating content. And right now, as you can see in the market, probably the last 6 months or so, a lot of freelance content writers have either lost their jobs or companies are cutting short on that. And I can tell you, even within our own company, we have a one-person marketing team, but we used outside agencies a lot. And the one-person marketing, he's a superhero now, with AI. I mean, it truly is. And he doesn't even come to me or Greg or anyone in the company to ask for any questions. Literally, he doesn't. And his answers are actually better than we probably want. So he's just like, okay, screw you guys. Maybe some. I told him, keep fact checking. You actually have made up stuff, which we don't have. Whatever that is. So content and code is then images, videos, and then there is a thing called autonomous agents where you can actually create AI to do multiple things at the same time. So one of the things that I experimented with is pricing intelligence. If I can create an agent that would call 5 different places, find prices for each one of them, assemble all of this together, and send it to me in a email or whatever format. Here is a price. Actually, it's making real phone calls, talking like real humans. And most of the people are falling into that trap, right? And it really interacts as almost human-like voice. And you can actually change it in such a way that don't call with the same phone number, use a different voice, act as this person. You can impersonate anybody literally and do these things. And intelligence gathering is going to be getting super automated with these agents. To create an agent and run these agents are much harder than it is. So it actually gives up on itself. It crashes. There's a thing called AutoGPT. So that has a lot of nuances to be worked through. But the possibilities are there. And I'll show you one example in a demo where I'm using a ChatGPT plugin infrastructure to do certain things for me. And it is showing you the glimpses of what agents would do. It's not exactly that. Like, for example, you can tell ChatGPT plugins to book me a trip, but also make the restaurant reservations. So it actually figures that out and does 2 things at the same time. So it has the ability to do mini planning. And then also goal setting. And say, okay, if you accomplish these things, then tell me, otherwise go try, one more time. And it's all in natural language. That's another thing is you can prompt all of these things directly. So the other things around this is like the commercial models versus open source models. So you have commercial models like OpenAI, Google's Bard. These 2 are closed commercial or Palm 2. And then there is open source models like Dolly, Llama, which came out of Facebook. They open sourced it, then it got leaked. Their instruction set got leaked. And now it is completely open source. So their entire, one of the largest models is open source now. Then there is a shift from analytical AI to generative AI, where people are gathering business information in a way that it is, for example, you are asking for overview of your financial statement or something like that, where you typically got a report in the past. Now you are asking for a summarization that is for you, and you want AI to summarize it in a way that you want it. It's a very different way of doing analytics, and with AI right now, with the certain types of training, it can actually give you wrong numbers. So there is a shift because people are interested in not reading an entire financial statement. But if this thing gives you wrong numbers, I'll show you one example of, Portland Timbers, and I asked ChatGPT and Bard about who scored the highest number of goals for Timbers all up. It said Diogo Valeri, but 100 goals more than what he scored for this entire season. And I was like, no, 310 goals? I don't know if it is right. He's not that super scorer, right? And then I was like, okay, dial it down to 2023. And ChatGPT got it right as Evander, 7 goals, which is the right one. And Google was like, oh, I got it under Evander at 4. And before, right? I asked the same question before, and it gave me a different answer. So, and there was no citation. So there is kinks to work through and a lot of things. But if you think about that as a glimpse of analytics, who we want to know. So there is improvements to be made. So always fact check the responses that you're getting. Transformer paper, attention is all you need. So that is basically revolutionize the way we are thinking about it. Is you don't need a whole lot of data to create these models. That is another thing. Is you can actually get to pretty intelligent models with very little or less data, and then it will train itself over a period of time. So that makes this model training more easier. People are training models on laptops, Raspberry Pis. So, but tiny little models. But you can say now it is open source. It's in the wild. They can train these models in a very small footprint. It can sprawl quite rapidly. So you don't need the money like OpenAI to do this. So this is a transformer model, which is and since we all are more technically oriented, it's a fairly easy to explain sequencing model. In this aspect, I will kind of overgeneralize things. A model. Think of it as a model by Zillow to predict the value of your house. Think of that as a model. So if you take an input sequence, which is the parameters that describes your house, and then the model is a thing that predicts the value, 2 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, it produces another value. If you put billions of this and all the sequences in a chain, that's a deep neural network. So it's basically each of these are little models that gets trained by the other ones, and it creates a huge neural network. It is somewhat that simple. So the thing is that when you actually start training these models over a long period of time, you can keep track of what it is actually learning. But that sequence to sequence model, where an input sequence, you have a model output sequence, it's fairly easy to understand. Then you have the encoder decoder architecture within it too. So there's a really good paper by Google on this. So I asked him to go read it, or you can give it to ChatGPT to summarize it or whatever. Yeah. So this is the architecture of the transformer model. Next is the neural machine translation. This is actually pretty popular. Most people have used Google for translation. This is actually it works. So you have an input sequence, and then you have different prompts and different endpoints where it will translate to that's correct. So this is pretty straightforward. You're translating languages, right? But there's been times where GPT-4 was able to learn a new language with no previous training data. Which is a dialect of a language, which means it has never seen or trained on the data, and it trained on it, on the new thing. I've personally done, I did a zero-shot training on GPT-4 with a language called C#. I trained it to actually understand a certain API on Databricks, and I taught it how to do it. Then I asked it to code in Python. It actually wrote correct compilable running code. Yeah. So I actually sent it to my whole company. Like, this thing is crazy. I taught it in C#. It actually wrote wrote its code for that same API in another language in the right form. So the bottom line is you can remove the fact that everything needs to have trained data. So because that zero-shot training has higher level of value in it. So GPT, the generative pre-trained transformer. So you think about the transformer model, and it is pre-trained, and you stick a whole bunch of them together, continue to increase your parameters. That's how you get bigger and bigger models. So now it is GPT-4. We don't know if there's a GPT-5 or they're working on GPT 4.5. Most of the things in OpenAI right now is pretty closed. Commercial world, or we don't know really what is happening. I don't know if any one of you guys have any insights, or nothing comes out of OpenAI other than some often talking about AI safety. So that's about it. So research work-wise, Google Brain team and DeepMind is combined now under one team. Google's team is pretty focused on commercial stuff. Microsoft, there is some papers coming out of them, but primarily applications. Then now the open source world is really trying to kick the tires on it and to see if we can actually do more research work or commercial work. One company who has been putting effort completely on open source is Databricks. They've released the open source model called Dolly. They've been putting a lot of effort into really giving the inner workings out. But they have a commercial interest of running their compute engine. It's all complex in the way it is. But as I see this getting better and better, this is the current state right now, where you can see Palm, which is Google's model, is the largest. There is a Palm 2, which is even larger. You can see it's GPT-3, GPT-4. We don't even know how many parameters GPT-4 is on. So maybe it's 300 billion, I don't know. Parameters are nothing but these variables that you construct this neural net on. And also people are saying, it doesn't matter how large it is, it doesn't really care about it. Like for example, if you are talking about your business, what's the point of the pre-trained transformers not about basketball? Like nothing, right? So the whole point is the general world knowledge is not going to be that important as you kind of build applications on it. So there is a move towards smaller models, more applied in business. So GPT 3.5 Turbo, that's we are using in commercial application, the demo that we are showing. AK tokens, open source. Bing AI is on GPT-4. So they have a citation work done there. It's also a closed model. So, yeah. Any questions so far? Okay, so I will kind of talk about fine tuning. So this is what we did and I did when we first got our hands on ChatGPT, is to take the GPT 3.5 at that time to fine tune it. Fine tuning is a way to tune the model with your own data, so you can ask questions about your own data. Okay, so we started to do it. It wasn't fun, but with commercial business data, and it was not giving the right results, and it was becoming very costly. Every time you run this, you run out. OpenAI wants to charge you. It will continue to cost you more. Okay, so fine tuning. If you want to fine tune a model with your own data, maybe PDF files or whatever, you can do it, but it is costlier. But the process works this exactly the ways, and it will ask. You can ask different questions of various kinds, and it will answer you. So, and when these models first came out, the message to the market was, "Oh, you take this model, fine tune, it'll be good." Right? I think you probably have heard that. Right? Everybody's like, "Oh, what is this OpenAI model? Let me fine tune it." Right? The next one is embeddings. Have you heard about vector databases? Anyone here? Vector databases? One person. Yeah. So vector databases are completely in the limelight right now. There is a company called Pinecone, which came out with the vector database. They have almost no revenue, 1.5 billion valuation. Yeah. Almost no revenue. Was that Pinecone? Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So then everybody's on vector databases now. So the idea of a vector database is doing similarities in a multi-dimensional space. So for example, if you think about two dimensions, one here, and you put a dot, you'll know what it is. And then you put another dot, you know the distance between the two. So if you take these dimensions and multiply that by 1,000, 10,000, you can create a multi-dimensional space, and you can put all these dots of all these words in that multi-dimensional space. And then if you ask a question like, is peanut butter and jelly close to each other, you know the distance between the two. So now we know peanut butter and jelly kind of goes together, right? So, or Belgian chocolate. So essentially what I wrote is I took the vector database trained model from Stanford, ran it on my laptop, and I was asking questions about Belgium's space chocolate. And it said 0.6, and then I will say Portland, and Lake Oswego, oh, not even close, right? So it knows based on not the keywords, but how they come together, right? So the similarity search and vector databases are getting a lot of popularity because you can take your existing information, vectorize it, And then you can actually ask questions or similarity search on it for your question or the prompt, and supply that information to an LLM and get the response back. So you can say things like, okay, if I were to go to this particular location, what are the things I should do? So even if so the people there, you can actually train the data with a vector database, and you can do something called embeddings. And that's where vector databases are getting a lot of popularity. And it does actually work. And it actually gives you meaningful results, except for anything factually that is computation oriented or relational database. Don't vectorize your relational database and ask questions. You could get wrong answers, because SQL and SQL questions are very trustworthy, right? Unless your SQL is wrong, our data is wrong, right? So you rely on that data and say, okay, what is the time the plane departs? 8:15, right? You don't want an approximation of by ish. Maybe it is, right? Right, but yeah. So you need the numbers. It actually is a SQL query that actually you can rely on, right? Vector databases will not give you those answers. It will actually say flights leaving at 8:15 and 8:20 and 8:10 are all the same. So because it is doing a similarity search and it is all by the distance, right? But if you want exact numbers, you have to use SQL, and you would probably wonder how this is now happening in the AI world. AI can write SQL based on natural language. It can write Python code, run that Python code, generate those answers, and get the results back. It writes really good SQL from natural language. Not all the time. And also, another thing it does is it will write SQL. It writes multiple SQL statements, fire it off and see what works, and do reasoning on it, and then pick the SQL that actually worked and executes on it. So it's even nuts. So but SQL is, something that we can rely on. So whatever responses I've got using SQL statements are factually right. Otherwise, you'll say, I don't know, right? SQL is not like giving you some BS answers. It takes more time. So that is another thing. So people are used to ChatGPT giving immediate answers like that. For business, it will spin around for like 5 seconds because it needs to do all of this work. You probably have seen it in maybe Bing, or Google Bard. So fine-tuning embedding primarily its cost and time. LLM small versus large LLMs. If you ask me the question around selection of LLMs for your business, I don't know if you have to go to OpenAI's large LLM. I don't know if it's worth the money you're paying for what is. You could do a lot of things that you would want to do with the Dolly, right? But you have to run Dolly yourself, or an open source model, or something smaller. So Google is doing these different stages of these models. So they have this tiny model, and Microsoft is also doing similar things where they're going to give you small models that can run fast, and it doesn't have all the information about the world, but it works. So my thinking is that over a period of time, people sell into smaller models, and the larger models are great for a New York Times or CNN or some large publishing house or some company, maybe for the government, whatever, right? Very large organizations. A smaller will be on smaller models. So Dolly, if you think about it, Llama is trained on 7 billion, 13 billion, 65 billion parameters. And Dolly is only at 6.9. It's a small model. You can train it in like a couple of hours. And it's actually a pretty good model. It's fairly cheap to run. This is I talked about the task-based agents. So different way to execute a task. One is I will show you about what is chain of thought, something called act and react, and plan and execute. Plan and execute is the hardest one. For example, I can give a goal of, find, if you are doing pricing intelligence, find apartment prices that I can afford in Beaverton area, and here is my parameters, do whatever it takes, right? And then it will plan it, figure out what are different tasks to execute. Maybe it is making phone calls, maybe sending emails to apartment managers, browsing the internet, and then compile a report and give it to me. So that is doable, but the stability of it is very, very low right now. So, so that is plan execute. So the planning portion of LLMs are not really good. It is okay. Deep computation is really bad with LLMs. That's one problem with it. So chain of thought, act versus react. So this is the actual science behind it. You can see reasoning from input. So essentially, what as humans, that's what we are doing, right? We basically trying to understand, trying to reason why we have to do something, and then we act on it, right? So a chain of thought is like you combine a series of thoughts and you chain it together and you get an ultimate answer. So majority of our work has been in the chain of thought, which is cheaper to execute on. Act and react models are also pretty popular these days. So trust and responsible AI, I think the trust portion of it is around fact checking, information that is not really valid. So how do you fact check AI? One way to fact check AI is to re-ask the same question. Can you please confirm, right? So what it does is basically takes the same prompt, the same answer that it gave, rehashes it, and to see if it actually went wrong. And then you can say, oh, I was wrong, I will correct it. A lot of times it happens in coding. So when it codes something, it goes its own weird ways to make some statements that you should not be there, right? And it's like, can you actually check this code is needed? Oh, so I'm sorry, that code is not necessary. Or statements that it made or whatever. So that's one way to verify that. The other is to really tell AI that you are actually wrong. Then third is it also gives wrong information when he's trying to over-explain something. So it takes it tried to explain something what it did, right? And it runs out all of the tokens and then gives you the wrong answer. It's gonna say, give me the answer, but do not need any explanation, right? Yeah, that's right. And also you can talk about prompts like, give me a rough estimate, So for example, I was asking an estimate of how many seniors are over 80 in the United States. And it gave me a big statement about Census Bureau and what the Bureau does and all that. And I was like, give me a damn answer. Oh, I don't know the exact answer. So fine, just give me a rough number. Okay, here is a rough number. It's between 8 and 12 million. And then he was like, okay, why do you say that it is in that range? But then he said, unfortunately, a lot of seniors pass away and whatever. So, but it gets you an answer, but it requires a lot of, things, messaging back and forth because of AI alignment OpenAI did with a lot of RLHF models. It doesn't want to say, it doesn't have the bias or harmful things, whatever. And then the question is around bias. Is AI more onto the left or onto the right or somewhere in the middle? So you have to interact with it and to see what it is. So go ahead.
The one question that I always have is whether you use ChatGPT or bot doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're providing customer data, like if you're uploading customer data, how safe is that? I mean, especially if you're providing healthcare data.
Oh, yeah, no, very big question. So I can tell you two factors. When OpenAI came out in November and December, maybe through January, they didn't have any policies around they will not use that data for their internal training. So now they made a policy that they will not be training their models on any customer data. The second is they are coming up with an enterprise version where you have the connectivity. And lastly, you have OpenAI now through Azure, which is a waiting list that basically is HIPAA compliant and all of that. So they're not using the data. So yeah, initially it was actually their statement was they were using it to. They thought, I think this is what they thought. This is when Greg and I were kind of talking about it. I think they launched this product to do an experiment. That's why they were collecting information, do the RLHF and stuff like that. And then people started actually putting their business data on it. Yeah. Yeah, so
Free data.
free data. Then it's like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah, I don't think they need any more data. I do believe that now because what happened with Stack Overflow, I don't know if you guys heard about that story. Stack Overflow is a place all developers go to find solutions to their questions. So I think they trained on Stack Overflow data, but they want to do a partnership deal or whatever, and it didn't work out. Now they have all of this stuff in play, and people are not using Stack Overflow. Their traffic went down. Now Stack Overflow laid off a bunch of people just a couple of weeks ago. So they essentially thought of like, hey, we house all of this data, that'll be more valuable. And Microsoft figured out that, oh, to a great extent, we don't need it anymore. So they just said, no, we don't care anymore. So it is interesting that, very complex situations, obviously Stack Overflow is the best because you need a human. But a lot of the other things, I don't go to Stack Overflow. I just use Copilot or ChatGPT to write the code. I will jump into the demo next, but
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
How do you tell it that it's wrong? Because you said at one point, sometimes you just have to tell it it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, what if you're wrong that it's wrong? I mean, it's not like, what do you say you're wrong?
Yeah, most of the times it accepts your answer and says that you are a super authority. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, you can make it mess up that session, but you won't, because you're not training that model at all, right? It is a closed box. It is not getting trained on anything that you're saying. It's a pre-trained model. Your input is not making any difference, but in your session it does.
oh, but in your session.
Yeah.
So when you say you're wrong, it
Just in your session. So
okay.
there is a bunch of work now that's been done on this whole topic about long-term memory. So think about it this way. Say if I was just born and I have some memory and that is my pre-trained memory. Then I have my long-term memory and then my short-term memory. So they're creating now a whole bunch of different things around how these vector databases will play into a long-term memory. Like for a business, it'd be like long-term memory is like history of the company. Short-term memory is like this quarter.
Right.
So the short-term memory will be more clear, more detailed. The long-term memory will be more vague. So you can essentially influence this long-term and short-term memory without messing around with the model. So, but otherwise, right now it is just, it's your session. Yeah, go ahead.
But if enough people said 2 + 2 = 5, does that mess up the
No.
badness?
Oh, if you have a vector?
Let's say we get like 100 million people all at once to say,
Yeah.
you're wrong, 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah, great question. I think if for the actual model, which is pre-trained, it does nothing to it. It doesn't change any of its neural net, right? For a prompt library or a long-term memory or a vector database, it influences that, right? Yeah, so it doesn't change the actual model. The only thing is like if you take a small model like a Dolly, and if you are retraining it on the wrong data, yeah, it's going to get messed up, over a period of time. Yeah, closed models don't. Okay, so any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
So I'm actually interested, I was just thinking of several use cases. One is, that Wikipedia is a community source database of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm very interested in who's going to put all the knowledge of the history in there to help it generate and actually fact check all the community written pages. Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like there's a potential of starting the AI neutral source.
Yeah.
Wikipedia. Right? That's kind of one case. The second one, again, kind of sharing my comments of what you just said is obviously I'm a speaker of Russian in English. Right?
Yeah.
And Russian is very, very complicated. So I've never met a single person who was not born in Russia who would speak Russian very, very well. but I was so impressed that I write in English, that I take an English article, that I take whatever, and ask it to translate to Russian, change the style. It's nearly perfect.
Wow.
And I'm so stunned that I'm almost like interested with, okay, so you explain to the woman how it works in the training. I'm like, okay, so what is that you do different that almost created that perfect native speaker?
Yeah.
Like in a sense that, I can literally take a legal document that was drafted in English, right? Translate it to Russian, tell it that it's a legal document, and it's going to correct the style of the document for it to be in compliance with whatever is specific to the country. I don't know if anybody else tried it. I did, and I was like very, very super impressed.
Yeah.
With the results.
Yeah. I think the data it works really well on is long form content, language translation, reading something, understanding to a degree of meaning, and giving you inferences on it. Like Greg and I pretty much these days read our contracts the same way. Real business, and this is not.
Yeah.
We got a contract from a client. We actually read it through and said, okay, what are the areas that we are favored, and what are the areas the customer is? Yeah. No, serious. I mean, this is,
It's just yesterday.
yeah,
Wow.
in absolute terms. And then we also set it to rewrite some of the places. Yeah. So it did an incredibly good job. It doesn't replace a lawyer to understand all of this stuff, but
As much as I
but
love
no, for sure, our legal bill is down, like clearly down. There's no question. Yeah. Yeah, quite a lot, right? So, but to your point, this will change certain jobs or certain industries much more deeply. And also another thing that within our company, and Greg usually go to Ron, another person who is kind of good contract guru, right? Who kind of knows a lot about how to read contracts. And now he can do it himself. Think about this whole thing, getting to be all the different levels of leaders can do things that was to some human who was really good at it, right? To a great
hated it.
Yeah, and he didn't even like it. Yeah,
Hated it.
yeah,
Still hates it.
yeah.
Well, what about security?
Mhm.
I mean, you're posting these like confidential contracts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what about it?
Yeah. So yeah, I will say when you're using this is where you have to get commercial versions of these products. Don't use the consumer versions.
And we have a subscription.
Yeah, you have a subscription. You have a
Oh,
commercial
so it
version.
won't be shared to the public?
No, no, yeah.
Okay.
It's like NSA, like service
Yes.
agreements.
So one more comment,
Yeah.
this is not again, kind of reflecting upon what you were saying, dead languages, right?
Yeah.
So, right now there is just a handful of scholars that claim the knowledge of Sumerian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I
Aramaic,
will
yeah.
never, Aramaic, I will
Yeah.
never speak this language, but to truth be told, I really want to put this technology to use to actually fact check it.
Yeah.
Would ChatGPT or whatever the platform is agree with those scholars that this is exactly?
Yeah.
Because we can actually change the history.
That is right. And or reading really old manuscripts that was written thousands of years ago, because you don't have, and you have the thing is that you have fragments of this knowledge on the internet somewhere, right? And if you look at the Google transformation transformer paper, it also calls that attention is all you need. That whole concept is we don't need that much information to infer something. So even if it can get some very fragments of some old manuscripts, even through some images, or then it can translate this. Like for example, I'm from India. Sanskrit is thousands of years old. I don't know if anyone from India knows Sanskrit. I mean, you don't, or no. But when I was going to school, they talked about Sanskrit is amazing. And like, what am I going to use it for? So, but there is a lot of scriptures written in Sanskrit thousands of years ago, but nobody can read it, or understand it or comprehend it. What was things there, I think some of these things can be revived, in terms of the translation itself.
What are your thoughts about bias in a closed system of models? So you use real estate as an example. You treat it historic real estate data in a community with redlining.
Yeah.
So, and you're using it to rely on decisions.
Yeah.
To make decisions.
Yeah. There's a lot of bias questions right now that is that's very real, and I think the industry right now they're not taking any stance right now. I think if you talk to any of the ChatGPT, some Altman statements, nobody's taking a stand on bias. All they're saying is that we have a responsible AI group, we have the framework. How do you prevent bias? How do you actually to be truly neutral? That's why Elon Musk said, I'm going with X, not AI, and I'm going to be zero bias. Okay. So
What does that mean?
what does that mean? It means it's more free speech and it is free open-ended. So essentially what his call is like, what he's, without saying it, he's saying the current models are all left. That's what somebody means. And so, the same thing with Twitter, right? He was like, okay, I will give all the Twitter data to be trained on, right? So I think that you can definitely see bias. If you spend enough time with it, you will experience it. You like it or not, you're not going to do anything about it, right? So you can go back and retrain this model, but you can probably make some changes and shifts around, like so one of the things that some of the journalists went and did is like write a negative statement about Biden, the same thing about Trump, So they literally posted those answers, right? Yeah, and the Trump was, more nastier than Biden was. So it is like, is it bias or is it actual facts? So it is, it is what it is, right? But there are people who don't like it. And that's going to be what you have to deal with, right? It's a very real question.
Yeah, so that's a disincentive for someone who works in government to use it for any decision making.
Oh, no, I don't think
It should not make your own decision.
a final decision.
Right.
I'm just leading my customers through a complex process. And
Yeah.
there's a whole segment of surveilled people that are missing.
Yeah.
Because we have no data and the model's not trained.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. I think we still need humans. I don't know the amount of humans needed for certain types of jobs. That's all it is, right?
Creative writing has changed.
Yeah, creative writing, coding. Right, how's that about?
Thanks again for your time.
Yeah.
I'm still coming up to speed, but basically this is, you have the data, the image, the contents to be able to make the model, and then you have the generative AI to be able to provide you responses based on the model, and if you don't like the responses or corrected, you just have to go back to the source model and make corrections.
That is somewhat of a right statement. The problem is the model itself, it was given a set of inputs, and you have that sequence, right? To input, model, output sequence, that since it is such a large neural net, at a certain point in time, what it generates is not based on what it trained on. So there is a degree of variation of how much influence the training data has on the generated data. What I can tell you is that without a safety net that ChatGPT or Bard has put in, there is less and less influence. And also the people who trained it, they don't know how it is actually giving you this. Why is it answer giving you this answer? So yeah, there isn't. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's true. Yeah.
That is kind of where you can also introduce the embeddings and fine-tuning.
Yeah.
If you really had a data set that was a little bit more specific and you said, I know a lot more about this on topic.
Yeah.
This is my data set, but topic, even on topic is based on.
That's right. Yeah. Now jump into a real demo. Hope it works. So this is a real application. So Skypoint, as a company, we have a product called Market Data Intelligence product. It is for senior care. This is senior living communities, buildings. There is about 50,000 of them in the United States, and almost 2.7 million seniors live in them. And so we created a product, it is commercially in the market, that gets information. It is like a Zillow of senior care. Currently it doesn't cover home care, but in the future we want to. So our goal is to pull all this data from different places. It could be Google, it could be, the state government sites, all of that, and connect it all together into a common place, and then provide benchmarking, reviews and sentiments and things like that. So to the market. So if someone operates or owns a senior housing or senior care community, they want to know what other prices are, how they are doing, all of this kinds of stuff. So, and it's a real product in the market, built using our software platform. We sell it, all that. So Greg is very familiar with this thing. So, so our goal as a team was to find a commercial application that we can put AI on top of it, right? Now Zillow does have a AI that is commercially available as a ChatGPT plugin, so you can ask questions and whatnot. But I don't know how deep it is. This is also kind of the back end of Zillow that they probably provide to realtors, so that's what we are doing. Our customers are like businesses who own senior care facilities, and it's a $100 billion business in the United States. It's a big business nobody knows about, So, so this is the product, and this is what we did with it. So we have a new company called Tabor, which is a ChatGPT plugin company. So think about it as like a mobile app in the App Store. So if you go to the App Store, you can download it. Similar to that, you go to ChatGPT. There's about 70 plugins in the platform now. You can install, like there is one for OpenTable, there is one for Zillow and all that. So that's one of the plugins. And then we had to architect the back end of it. And there is very little people know how to do it. This thing called, this is kind of, I feel it's kind of a new area called AI engineering. So it is not just machine learning or data science. It is like engineering concepts coming to AI. How do you actually put this together and create commercial applications out of it, right? So think of it, a county has a ChatGPT plugin for their citizens to do, ask questions or whatnot. But it is very conversational and it is very intelligent. So, and the back end, if you go down all the way to the bottom, is we have a data warehouse which has all this awesome information. And if you have wrong information in there, the AI is not going to help you, right? So, and that Skypoint GPT agent is a piece of software that uses a couple of products. It's all open source. One called LangChain, which is ability to chain things together for that chain of thought reasoning. So we do a chain of thought reasoning on the whole thing. So, and it responds to it. So this is kind of how it works. And this is the large diagram. I don't know if you can see it. So we pull this data to the lakehouse. We create silver tables. And we threw in Microsoft Azure SQL chain of thought pattern into it. And it has a long-term memory. And we have SQL running on it and pushes up. So the actor is the person who is asking this question. It goes to this API engine. It pre-processes the query or the prompt. And then it creates multiple SQL statements on the fly and figures out which SQL statement is a potential right answer, shoots it against the SQL database and pulls it up. So Databricks, I think, just recently released their LangChain agent. You don't need that SQL anymore, potentially. But if you want to keep Microsoft SQL, you can. Other things like master tables, this is all your database design. So this is real product, this is real commercial stuff. So we wanted to see how this actually works. And I can actually jump in and show a demo. Okay. Yeah, so I'll show you a couple of other examples before. One is that, So who scored the highest, number of goals? Like those kinds of questions you can ask. But you can actually, if Timbers had a plugin, you could have that, as like add a Timbers plugin. So what I'll do is I'll do our current demo itself. So what I had to do, I have this token in the API. So what it is doing is, okay. So the question I'm asking is like, write an email to my friend Greg's grandpa with a list of 5 communities in Oregon State based on customer satisfaction, explaining why he should move to one of those 5 communities. Okay, so that top 5 communities in Oregon based on customer satisfaction, that is coming from that Skypoint GPT. It is coming from SQL. So you can see what it did right before. So it is an unverified plugin because we custom added it into the thing. That's why it is like an app store. When you create your new app, it is not published to the world. It says it is you can add that. So it actually did. So those 5 communities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that actually is factual data from the SQL database. Everything else, it actually got the response. We colored a few other things around it. But the entire response is crafted by ChatGPT itself. For example, I hope this message finds you in good faith. And I am a friend of your grandson, right? It is actually doing real stuff. And I didn't tell it, to do all of this stuff. And we've recently been discussing blah, 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 And here is the list of properties, and why you should move. Essentially I want grandpa to move to right? So, but thinking,
is any of the data in the backend database of conversational nature, or is it more statistical references? Is it generating this type of response in a language that humans can understand based on pure statistics on the backend database, or is there kind of more description on the backend database?
In between.
Yeah.
Is there grammatical errors?
Yeah. You will have grammatical errors. Yeah.
And also that same sentence, I get almost one of them a day. I hope you're in good health and happy spirits. Or something.
So one thing I think somebody that's a good point. No, that is a good point. You can ask it to change the style or don't use the style you've used it before. So if you just keep without any sort of changes to its style, it's going to use the style that typically it uses. So you can kind of maneuver it, Yeah. So, but it is very polite, I can tell you, unless you ask it to be non-polite.
Well,
so
it's very HIPAA violation.
Yeah.
I know it's none of your business.
And this is what it did. So I will run this prompt again. I don't know if I time out on my tokens. Yeah. So what it does is it typically picks up the plugin, and what it picked up the plugin. So again, okay. So what it is writing on the top is the answer it got from our backend, right? And then rest of the stuff, it's coming up with it.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah. It is.
And we've recently, Greg should be Greg and I,
Yeah.
right?
Alex, how can you see that?
Yeah.
Proper grammar really bothers me.
Yeah, you can say get your grammar right. So I think the response we gave was, to your question, it was not just numbers. We added some. So the request came to us was in natural language. The response we gave was also natural language, with factual data in it. So like the springs at Anna Maria, all these are factual data, and the response is correct. This is the actual ranking.
In the background, it's just tables and data,
It's databases.
qualitative reviews.
Yeah.
And I think your question was, is there quantitative statistics? This is all just looking at the qualitative, information and then making quantitative, like top 5 ranking based on it, which I think is amazing.
So
Yeah, I
basically,
think
long-term
that's-
memory as the database of all the senior livings across.
Our data warehouse has that.
uh,
The long-term memory is for our cache. So when you ask similar questions, we don't want to keep hitting the data warehouse. So we actually collect all of the responses.
And
Yeah.
you collected all this from the 50,000
Senior living
facilities
community.
around the
Yeah,
country.
Yeah.
You guys did the research, you guys pulled in that data and created that.
That's great.
We scrape that data, we source that data, but we also are now starting to use GPT-4 to write new descriptions for each one of them.
Okay.
Analyze the data itself, and we are starting to use AI for data analysis. So now this was like question answering. But you can add other plugins, but how does this know it is about a senior living question? So it is reasoning, it's like, oh, it looks like a senior living question, let me ask Gaber. Or 5 other things like this, right? And then produce a constructive answer. So the biggest value we see is this is one example. If you go into a senior living community, they employ a lot of workers, and a lot of them, what they do is they're trying to understand what is going on with the senior in their facility, and they communicate that to the family, right? Think about the amount of automation this can have. You're state splitting in Outlook, and you're asking a prompt, which is coming, by the way. So there's Copilot coming in Outlook, where you can do this, and it is actually pulling the actual data, and there is Copilot plugins and all of this. The same things are coming into Microsoft, but it is actually can remove and give a lot of productivity for people who are doing this manually. Right now, people are taking this thing from PCC or another system, copy pasting it, changing it, writing it, and now you can have a draft, which you can copy paste and make some adjustment, fix the spelling, English, whatever, shoot it off, yeah.
I'm not saying it's not impressive.
No, yeah.
So let's say I want to ask a simple question to ChatGPT saying that, hey, give me the most affordable senior living option in Portland.
Yeah.
And will it still pick Tabor?
Yeah, it could, it should. I mean, let's do that. Give me the word. The most affordable, right?
Yeah.
The whole senior living. Yeah. So community in Oregon, right?
Oregon with cost.
Yeah, so I think you will have it. Yeah. Give me the top 5, maybe, right? Yeah. So affordable, yeah. So I don't know if we have the cost data, but it is a senior living related question. It should trigger. Yeah, it did pick it up. But we have the answer or not is, we might not have the answer.
We don't have pricing data.
Yeah.
That is what.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope your health is well.
No, see that. So yeah, so it gave the top 5 communities. It gave the answer, but it was not affordable. Yeah, but it did pick it.
Okay, good. I know the springs. Okay.
Yeah. But so I don't think the Springs is that affordable.
It's a good place.
It's a good place.
And it is not affordable.
So I think that the whole value we are seeing, it is reasoning, picking the right thing, is not going to the wrong place. So if we can construct this over a period of time and make it commercially viable, this thing can be extremely powerful, right? So that's where we are seeing the glimpses of a general intelligence. If this thing could be a general intelligence for senior care, how much impact this will have on like every single analyst's life or caregivers, So because we trained it only on a data set primarily for reviews and reputation. So as we add more data, and then we have more, I have more prompts that I can use for various different things. I'm using one prompt. So
do you see this as a potential replacement there's a service called A Place for Mom? And then is it is that what you're
I've
doing?
never heard of it. I mean, this is a direct competitor.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Place for Mom has been a data aggregator and a holder of this information, and has sold services and referrals off the bat.
Yeah. It's
right, and so now senior living has one of the highest operating costs. It has very tough ecosystem that it works within, the referrals and sales. I think when you look at the technology here, you look at how do we make that more efficient? How can we get better care? How do we provide all this data to the consumer, unbiased, hopefully, to make the right decision for their family members?
And you gotta build trust.
Yeah, you gotta build trust. You gotta get people to use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the beginnings of, I think, giving power to the consumer.
Yeah. I mean, I have other prompts like this. I brought a bunch of them. You can throw this in. What is the year over your satisfaction? Write me a statement about that, whatever, right? So essentially, you're giving a question, and then you're explaining what your task is, and that question's answer is constructed in, and then it formulates a task.
Greg, to your point too, you don't necessarily have to get them to use ChatGPT, right? Because you could overlay that on any private website and just API it straight over to the data set, right?
For instance, we're working with another company called Senior, right, that wants to take our data and is using it in their own ways of providing qualitative metrics on and their services as well. And so their service agents are now able to use LLMs to very quickly respond to a consumer that's asking very specific questions. Right. And so, I mean, it is not only empowering the consumer, but it's making those agents that can serve consumers that much more intelligent and quicker to react.
Yeah. You can say, write a brief, these kinds of things. Yeah. Other things I've done is like give a database schema and come up with all the KPIs, so it is just like, what it is there. Yeah. So it gives the answer, then sometimes it's like, okay, rest of the stuff it skips. So what's that? Oh, Tabor, yeah.
It's calling the service.
Yeah, it is the way it is working. This is. I think this. The way the thing is put together. This kind of a repeatable structure potentially for other applications. Yeah.
So if I run a senior living facility and I want to use a service, so how would the costing work for it? I mean, say you're going to take total service costing, or
most of the times, I think you mentioned Place for Mom, right? They charge 1 month rent. So, and they're $500-600 million
to the community.
To the community,
not
to the consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is not a consumer paying.
Oh.
It's brand recognition in some ways, right? It's a way of saying, hey, look at what we can do. For us, we were looking to work with an organization to help unify their analytics.
Yeah.
Let them do these SQL queries and have these agents internally with their own business data versus public data.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where it gets really powerful. The public data is cute, but your business data and the insights and driving your business. As I said, senior living spends 60% of their cost,
80% on operating
workforce and manual labor. Right? Think if they were able to reduce that and reappropriate that to the care of the senior.
Yeah, that is where the money should go, right?
Right.
Take care of seniors, not writing emails, figuring out what
Not
to do.
making Excel sheets,
sheets, like,
writing P&Ls,
Yeah.
20 people.
Yeah.
We've seen it all.
Yeah, I think this can make a huge difference in healthcare, citizen services, government, different areas where you can reduce the manual labor. And that's what every government agency wants to do, is provide service for their citizens. They don't want to be doing other things, right? It's the same case in healthcare. Since I spent 5 years, 6 years in healthcare, so firsthand, I was like, okay, what should we do? The most time I was asking our CEO, I spent a lot of time with him. We should be spending time with our doctors, spending time with our members. Everything else is like, administrative overhead, processing claims, prior authorization, sending email. Oh, if you look at a company like Cambia, it sends so many emails and statements about explanation of benefits. It's all crafted, made, it's primarily data in their systems, put together in, nice messages, right? I mean, it's one simple use case, but so much economic opportunity. So I think this will, I was showing one example of this, but this has the ability to create real dollar difference within organizations if you apply it right, So, who knows?
Listen, I was just thinking about that. In larger organizations, we usually all have business intelligence tools, and they're regularly underutilized. And to really truly get the best value of it, you need numbers of people, not just to come in and build something, but really take the time to understand the business, the process, and the 5 to 7 whys behind it, and why that's happening.
Yeah.
Has there been any analysis done? Is how much did it be worth going this route, go to that next level versus hiring 5 to 7
people to do it?
Truly understand to be able to get to that level too? And is this at that level?
I think this is what I'm thinking first. Since it's a natural language interface, you are going to get a lot of questions that typically you get from your users. I think in your phase 1, it can really help you to hone in what people care about. So that'll be a pretty good starting point. I don't think this completely replaces a BI report. I think the things that you would use it for potentially would change, right? I mean, we were with a customer 3 days ago. He's a CEO of a pretty recognizable Oregon-based association for healthcare. He was like, I don't want to read all of those reports. I don't have the time for it. What he's doing is he's asking his staff to get the reports, read it to him. And he literally asked us, can you put this thing in for me so I can ask these questions? And I don't need to bother, his team who was sitting right there. So he's more conversational, and he doesn't read anything anyway by himself. I don't make any other stuff.
There's companies that are building avatars that can then tell you the information on your BI report. It's like, just look at the BI report. But some people don't want to take that time, don't have that time. Right, and so there's so many applications. Language, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Or the statements that we come from a county or a city, or how many you actually read it or understand it, okay, did it change over the last 6 months? Yeah. But a lot of times you can't have that conversation with anything,
Closes the gap on data literacy.
Yeah.
We all see hearing people, data literacy this, data literacy that. We spend all this time training how to look at a chart, a graph, and infer. How about speak English?
That's a new coding language. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. It was so much fun.